Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Huddersfield Planning Committee. Right, we'll start with item 1, membership of the subcommittee. Have we any? Yes, Councillor Hall.
I'm here for shade over this.
Thank you. Everybody else present and correct. Thank you. Right, item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Somebody move them. Somebody that was here. Councillor Davies, yeah. Seconded. Councillor Uppel, yes. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest and lobbying. Can I go around now, and I'll start with Councillor Hall.
Yes, I've received 3 emails.
Councillor Hall.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Paul. My apologies.
Councillor Hall.
Just page 95, you know.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Sorry, what was that? None.
None. Councillor Bellamy.
None, Chair.
Councillor Dunford. And Councillor McGuinn.
Item 10, 3 emails received, no action taken.
Councillor Homewood.
Page 95, item 10 had a couple of emails in relation to that objection. No action taken.
Councillor Sarwar.
I'm here.
Councillor Uppel. Councillor Smith.
Item 10, emails received, no action taken.
Councillor Davies.
Received 3 emails. Application 91055, page 95, no action.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, Chair, item 9 on page 83. I requested the officer to take this application to the planning committee for members to consider. But as I have already expressed my opinion on this one, so I think if you advise me, I'll leave the room or stay.
Thank you. Councillor Armour.
Yes, sir, I've received a number of emails, 5 or 6, I've lost count, about item 10 on page 95.
Thank you. That's all right. Item 4, admission of the public.
Councillor Lance, if you could just confirm whether you've had any.
I've had none.
None. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Admission of the public. Well, the public are here, thin as they are. Thank you. That's good. Deputations and petitions.
None received, Chair.
Public question time. We've no questions. No. Planning applications. Now, on the planning applications, what I'm asking for here on this one is that we move the first one, which is item 7, and in fact take it to the end, because there's quite a bit of can we say explaining to do on that one. So I'm asking that one becomes the last one, and we move up the other ones relative to it. In other words, we'll start at the one at Newsham. Has anybody? That's what I'm proposing. Is the committee prepared to go along with that? Yeah. Can I just have a show of hands, please, just to confirm? Thank you. So right. We'll kick off with that one, which now becomes number 7, and that is the 22 dwellings at Hart Street, Newsham, page 55.
Thank you, Chair. If you cannot see the slides or if I'm too quiet, please let me know. My name is Nicholas Hurst and I am the case officer for this application. The site has outline planning permission for the erection of 22 dwellings. Therefore, the principle of residential development on the site and the number of units is established. This application seeks approval of all of the reserved matters, which are access, appearance, landscape, layout, and scale.
Sorry, Nick, sorry to interfere. Some people are struggling to hear. So if you could maybe just speak a little bit louder, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yep, I will do. I'll start again. Sorry, Chair, is this a good volume for you?
Certainly, as I requested it.
Yeah, right. Hello, members. My name is Nicholas Hurst, and I'm the case officer for this application. The site has outline planning permission for the erection of 22 dwellings. Therefore, the principle of residential development on the site and the number of units is established. This application seeks approval of all reserved matters, which are access, appearance, landscape, layout, and scale. The application is brought to the committee due to the level of public objection, and as a request for a committee decision was issued by Ward Councillor Andrew Cooper. The north of the site hosts 2 artificial reservoirs historically linked to Newsham Mills. The remains of Newsham Mills are located just north of the site, as can be seen here. The south half is naturalised land. There are roads to 3 boundaries, and the site is in the north of Newsham Local Centre, which is sited just down here. This image is taken from Newsham Road and shows the state of the south of the site. The junction with Hart Street can be seen to the right. Apologies, I'm told that there may be audio difficulties, so I'll just pause the presentation there.
It's sorted, Nick. Carry on, please.
Cheers, thank you. This image is taken from Newsham Road and shows the state of the south of the site. The junction with Hart Street can be seen to the right, just here. This image is taken from within the site and is facing towards Newsham Road, along there. This final photo shows the reservoirs. It was taken on the northwest boundary looking into the site. A new road is to be formed from Hart Street and will give access to 11 of the dwellings. View of the dwellings front onto Hart Street, as can be seen by the red marker, and Newsham Road. The dwellings are well proportioned and laid out, and all units comply with the National Described Space Standards. An area of public open space would be sited in the south corner and give pedestrian access to Naomi Street and Hart Street. A row of TPO trees along the boundary with Naomi Road will be kept, bar 3 that are in a poor state and need to be removed on arboricultural grounds. The top image shows Hart Street street scene, and the bottom Newsham Road. Dwellings are 2 stories in height and are predominantly semi-detached, with the exception of 2 terrace rows of 3 properties each. And here are further examples of the typical appearances of the dwellings. For context, the outline application was initially refused by the council but upheld at appeal. The council initially refused the outline due to concerns the proposal would harm the area's character and ecology. On ecology, the inspector disagreed that the proposal would cause harm, subject to conditions based on the submitted ecological reports. The inspector assessed the loss of the site and its open water and accepted that the development would cause harm to the character of the area. However, the inspector, weighing the planning balance, concluded that the benefits of the proposal would outweigh the harm caused. Therefore, in granting the outline, the principle of development for 22 units is established and our assessment is limited to the reserved matters. The report before members outlines officers' full assessment of the proposal. The scale, appearance and layout of the proposed development is considered acceptable and will suitably harmonise with the established built environment and would be visually attractive. Furthermore, the proposal would not detract from the amenity of neighbouring residents. The accesses, consisting of the new road, driveways and pedestrian paths, are acceptable and there are no highway-based concerns for the proposal. The landscaping is attractive and the public open space would provide benefits to the wider community as well as future occupiers. Matters relating to drainage and ecology were conditioned at outline stage. However, officers have worked with the applicant to ensure appropriate details have been provided for this stage of the application. Local residents have raised concerns over the loss of the reservoirs from a drainage perspective. Currently, the reservoirs are only fed by a culvert that crosses Newsham Road. The reservoirs then discharge into the combined sewer. It is proposed to reroute the culvert directly into the combined sewer, simplifying the existing flow of the water. Yorkshire Water have been involved in discussions and do not object to this arrangement. For the site, a surface water drainage and attenuation system has been designed, which the lead local flood authority does not object to. Turning to ecology, the application has demonstrated that the on-site mitigation of biodiversity enhancements have been incorporated into the proposal. This includes a replacement pond to ensure the site retains its current ecological function. Although the aforementioned ecological condition imposed on outline will require further details for off-site works at a subsequent stage during discharge conditions. However, the results of a crayfish survey are pending. A desktop assessment and historic evidence indicate their presence is unlikely. Despite that, it is good practice to undertake a survey so as to be definitive. Given the low expectations of crayfish being present, officers consider it reasonable to recommend approval, subject to delegation back to officers to await the outcome of the survey, which is expected within the next few weeks. In the unlikely event crayfish are found, the application will be returned to committee for further consideration by members. Turning to planning contributions, the proposal includes a full policy compliant provision as detailed within the committee recommendation. This includes 4 affordable dwellings, on-site public open space and off-site public open space contributions, and the provision of metro cards. 72 objections have been received to the proposal. Many of these relate to matters of principle which were determined by the outline application. The public representations have been considered and addressed within the report. In conclusion, the proposed reserve matters application is considered acceptable, being in compliance with local and national policy. It is therefore recommended for approval, subject to delegation back to officers to await the outcome of the crayfish survey, arrange the Section 106 agreement, and issue the decision with the recommended conditions. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first speaker we'll have is Diane Sims, who will be dialing in.
Right, hello, Dan, can you hear me? Because I can't hear you. Hello? Hello? That's better, yes? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Right, well, I don't know if you're aware, but I'll emphasise the fact you've got 3 minutes to speak now, and after, or should I say, when we get to the last 30 seconds, I will say 30 seconds, and then once that's run out, that is your time. And if you're still going, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you off. But hopefully you'll fit it all in 3 minutes. Thank you very much. You can go ahead now.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of residents, I wanted to say that the impact of removing Newsham's mill ponds, which are fed by a 200-year-old drainage system, is understandably of great concern. And we've noted that the local flood authority have objected, and there are many other ways in which the plans are harmful for Newsham. It's the large bodies of open water which create the habitat for wildlife, including nesting water birds and foraging bats. And this is also what creates amenity value for local people. There's no way of mitigating for the complete removal of both these ponds, and the patch of open space proposed is no replacement for a mill pond. It's also right next to the busy main road and therefore offers no value for those who currently spend time quietly watching wildlife on the open water. All of the street trees will be removed from Hart Street without replacement, which has an impact on residents there. And we're concerned that there's no mention of a method statement for how the protected trees along Naomi Road would actually be protected during the construction work. The back wall of the southern pond is the retaining wall for the banking that these trees grow in, so that currently gives stability. The mill ponds are more than just adjacent to the remains of Newsham Mill, but they're also what remains of Newsham Mill. The 19th century pond and the arch culvert are actually the oldest surviving parts of the Newsham Mill site. So obviously, on behalf of the Newsham Mills campaign, we think these should be retained either in whole or in part. They're important features of our local heritage. As we've heard, the visual amenity of this green space for the character of the area is clear, and this has been highlighted by successive planning inspectors. And at the time of the previous appeal, as we've heard, this had to be balanced against the supply of land for housing, but since the approval of the Kirklees local plan, there is a proven 5-year supply of housing land, so the circumstances that these plans have been brought forward under no longer exist and haven't existed for a long time, and you'll appreciate that feels very unfair for residents today. Every previous application for building on Newsham Mill ponds has been refused by this council. So we just wanted to remind you that the character and challenges of the site and its value to the people who live here haven't changed since this committee last considered plans for Hart Street. But what has changed is that even more people now benefit from spending time watching.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And this includes people from 2 day centres, which are now right next to the site. And due to Newsham's topography, it's quite difficult for many people to access any green spaces beyond the village centre. What's also changed since we last heard this application is the benefit for the site has become even more significant to residents because of COVID. So the ponds provide vital solace that continues.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next to speak, Councillor Cooper, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand there's difficulties for people listening online. I've been getting messages about that. So to start with, I've seen the proposal for a pond. Called as a pond, compared with the mill ponds, it's a puddle and of far less ecological value than the mill ponds that are there right now. So on the 24th of October 2016, this planning committee refused development on this site on these grounds. You said this proposal would result in the loss of an area of open space and habitat of principal importance that would detract from the character of the local area, contrary to policies D1, D2, parts 7 and 8. Also NE6 of the Kirklees Unitary Development Plan and the guidance contained in part 11 of the National Planning Policy Frameworks chapter conserving and enhancing the natural environment. That's what was said by this committee. Nothing has changed to make that decision wrong. What has happened is that a government planning inspector who was elected by no one has overruled your decision, thereby showing a contempt for local people and local democracy. I urge members of the Planning Committee to stand up to this contempt and to again refuse the application on the same grounds, because nothing has changed. Let us expose the planning system for what it is: a developer's charter that ignores local concerns, the local environment and local democracy. If local politicians don't stand by our communities, who will? Thank you.
Finish, Councillor Cooper. Oh, thank you very much. Right, we've got now I'm looking, I've got the agent now. The agent like to. Hello, Mark. You've got 3 minutes. When we get to the final 30 seconds, I will flag that up 30 seconds and you will be cut off after the 3 minutes. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I have Nick Gould, who's going to do the first part of 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you to the elected members and officers for the chance to speak today. Myself and Mark are excited to be able to represent the 22 affordable properties in Newton that we believe is a positive project for the area, providing much needed affordable housing in Kirklees. The development is going to be delivered for Yorkshire Housing, who has secured Homes England housing partner, one of the region's most respected housing associations, and obviously have a track record of delivering quality affordable homes. Yorkshire Housing's decision to partner on the development follows them identifying the housing need in the Newton area after a consultation with the Kirklees Housing Service. Should we be granted reserve matters permission today, we'll be looking to deliver the scheme as soon as possible to provide for this housing need. Urban Developments are proud to be working alongside affordable housing providers in West Yorkshire and have a pride in delivering quality homes where they have a social need. We respectfully point out that the site already benefits from being granted outline permission for the same number of units in 2016 via the planning appeal, and therefore the matters that we are discussing today are representative of the appropriateness of the scheme's layout and design, as well as acceptance of technical reports, not that the site is appropriate for housing. We have the recommendation for the approval from the planning officer after having worked closely over the past few months with the planning team, experienced ecologists and consultants, and have been able to supply all the technical reports and evidence to queries raised through the process, particularly around ecology, highways and drainage. Throughout this process, we've made significant enhancements to the quality of design, including responding to the layout, quality of materials and highway configuration. We believe all technical aspects of the scheme have been resolved.
We've developed a project to create a respectful scheme within its local context. The design of the 22 units in cast stone have been heavily influenced by the properties in the surrounding area, with the incorporation of similar window proportions, roof details and bay windows. The sustainable mix of 2 and 3 bedroom affordable houses respond to the local housing need for the area. The affordable housing addition can only be seen as a benefit to Newton and the surrounding area. We have designed the scheme to prevent on-street car parking in the surrounding area. Each of the dwellings will have 2 parking spaces, with a further 4 visitor spaces within the site curtilage. We acknowledge the history of the mill.
30 seconds.
Allow the local community to benefit not only from the usable POS, but an appropriately sized development that aims to complement the local street scene. We feel the removal of the mill pond will be mitigated as part of the ecological design implemented on the scheme. As part of the detailed discussion with the council's ecologists, a pond has been included as part of the semi-natural POS space with wildflower meadows.
Thank you, your time's up.
Thank you.
I must admit, I'm not too happy with the reception either. I've just mentioned it here. It is very bitty. I don't know what. I'm not a tech man anyway. IT is the last thing that I'm in favour of. But we have what we have, and can we improve it in any way?
Well, we've noted it, Chair. I don't know if there is anything more we can do, is there? We've noted it, Andrew, and what we'll do, we'll have to look at that and see in terms of future meetings to see what we can do. That's Nick Gordon,
The applicant, you know. Yes, hello Nick. I'll just reiterate what you've just been told regarding the 3 minutes. I'm very keen on the 3 minutes, and that's all you will get. But at 2.5 minutes, I'll flag up 30 seconds, and then you'll get a fair warning to wind down. Thank you.
We feel the removal of the mill pond will be mitigated as part of the ecological design implemented on the scheme. As part of the detailed discussions with the council's ecologists, the pond has been included as part of the natural and semi-natural POS area with a wildflower meadow which will retain the site's ecological amenity. We have carefully developed the scheme so that the existing trees to Naomi Road boundary will not be affected, including the provision of a no-dig pathway to certain boundaries. Proposed Section 106 payments include additional off-site open space contributions, transport and education and training, where we have already made contact with the relevant council department to offer employment opportunities. Moving on to drainage. The drainage has been designed in accordance with Yorkshire Water and the LLFA requirements after consultation feedback, and we believe the design reduces the risk of exceedance of flooding. We would further note that the mill ponds do not provide any balancing or attenuation benefit to the site, and that the water which flows into the pond currently flows straight out into the mains drainage system. These tests were carried out in the presence of Yorkshire Water and the council lead flood authority. Both authorities have confirmed that the pond only provides an outlet into the sewer into Hart Street. In essence, the water enters the pond by 100mm diameter pipe and almost immediately flows out of the pond by 150mm diameter pipe into the sewer. We have noted the public's concern regarding the loss of trees, which are covered under the TPO, and we would like to clarify that the trees in question are covered under a group TPO along Naomi Road, and that the 3 trees that are proposed to be removed are under the advice of the arboricultural consultant due to the poor health. We have a crayfish survey being carried out today, and the results will be delivered to the planners in the coming weeks, which we understand that there is a limited possibility that crayfish may be found within the ponds.
30 seconds.
I don't think we have anything particular else to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wonder if at this juncture the legal officer wishes to come in to have a few words, so I'll let her come in and then I'll bring it to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind members that we're not determining the principle of this application. Outline permission has already been granted. The decisions that are to be made today are in terms of the reserved matters. That's things such as layout, landscaping, design. The Councillor Cooper was exhorting you to refuse on the same grounds. Well, that boat has gone. The outline has been granted, and we're now at the stage of approving or otherwise the reserved matters. Thank you.
Right, members. Councillor McGuinn, and then Councillor Sir Richards. Oh, sorry, Lee Richards.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to agree with Councillor Cooper. Nothing has changed, except the fact that the inspector has overruled that decision we made in October 2016. The 5-year rule was in force then. There was insufficient supply because there was no local plan. Now we've had a local plan, and it's not allocating a local plan for building, for development, but that doesn't matter because the decision has already been made. It's been allowed by an inspector before the local plan was accepted. A planning committee refused application in 2016 because we were worried about the loss of the open space in Newsham, the destruction of natural environment and destruction of the ecology in the village. I think those reasons still stand, but there's nothing we can do about it because, as the legal officers pointed out, the principle's been accepted. So I'm really disappointed about this, but I will be voting for it, but I won't vote against it. I'm going to abstain.
Yes, Councillor.
Newsham mill ponds are an important ecological part of Newsham village. I have an interest insofar as they are within walking distance from my home, as they are from many other people's homes. And the planning inspector in 2009, when he refused this, said the openness of the previously undeveloped part of the site provides valuable visual relief in what is otherwise a fairly densely developed urban area. The loss of previously undeveloped open land resulting from the proposal would have an unacceptable impact on the character and appearance of the area, and that has not changed. 4 years ago, this committee, of which I was not a part, as I was not then an elected member, unanimously rejected this, and I applaud that decision, which I feel was the right decision. But as Councillor McGuinn and the officers have reminded us, we are having this forced upon us with very little that we can do to change anything, which feels like a slap in the face for local democracy and local people and local councillors. Of the 22 dwellings, we hear that 4 of these will be affordable, which we applaud. But Newsham has a large brownfield site behind a mill, which we've been crying out for them to develop for many years. And despite every piece of support we could give them, that site still remains an empty brownfield site. It would be much better to see that built upon and the 2 mill ponds retained as an open space for local people. If we must have it, I think this committee should direct the head of planning to ensure that all the planning conditions under the Section 106 agreement are completed within 3 months of the date of the committee's resolution. It is with a very heavy heart that I will have to say goodbye to these mill ponds. They mean a lot to people. It was a sad loss when the mill burnt down, and these are the remaining part, apart from the clock tower that we have, that are part of the heritage asset of the village. So I'm very sorry to see them gone, if that must be what happens. But I am still concerned about the ecology of the area, retaining the trees. I think the public open space is minimal. I hadn't even noticed the pond until it was pointed out today. It is so small. I don't think there's much more I can add to that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Opal. Councillor Homewood.
Okay, thank you. I agree with a lot of the points that have been made. It does feel like there's not much we can do here. I think we from my perspective, I'll probably have to approve this. But just on a couple of points, this contribution towards Metro cards, I know we do this a fair bit, and I don't think this is the best way to look at sustainable travel. Really, we put a certain amount of contribution towards it, and whether these Metro cards are ever used or not, I don't know. So that's just more of a general point. I don't really think that's the best way to do things. I understand all the units will be affordable rent, and they'll be operated by Yorkshire Housing, and not just the 4 which has been secured within the Section 106 agreement. But if that could just be confirmed, that would be great. And yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Councillor Homewood and then Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, just to support some of the comments other members have made, I remember being on the committee when this came before. I do find it quite surprising that a planning officer can overturn a decision based on local heritage to which they're not part of, and why that decision is better made by them than by local members. And I presume that from a legal perspective we have considered that is justified, and that shouldn't be challenged in any other legal way. Appreciate that's not necessarily possible, but I think it's just worth making sure that we've explored all those options. The other thing I just wanted to check was just my understanding of this, because there's quite a lot of reference to the kind of position of this development in terms of the listed buildings and the mill. So can I just check, it's the mill is the listed building. What about the buildings that are across the road adjacent to the mill pond? Are they not listed? Because I presume that they're all part of the same historic entity. So I appreciate that the mill ponds, it sounds like, are not listed or wouldn't be listed, but I'm just trying to understand the whole relationship of the area, because just to me, the position of that site is different in association to the mill than other developments in that area. And, as far as I can see, this looks like a relatively average type of, I'm not quite sure exactly how it fits with the listed building, in an associated listed building. But yeah, if any clarity on those points would be helpful, but I do appreciate what people have said around, that decision's been taken out of our hands somewhat.
You finished, Councillor Homewood. I'll call in now Councillor Armour, then I'll have the officer come back with some response. Thank you.
There you go. I thought we were told not to. Sorry. My apologies. Yes, I've got a very heavy heart about this. But as it's perfectly clear, the principle of the development is lost. It's been approved. There's no argument about it. And I just cannot find enough grounds to vote against this application. And I think it's sad. I don't like to see areas like this lost, but unfortunately, I'm not certain yet, but I'll either abstain or actually vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if the officer would like to come back.
Sorry, you're asking me as legal officer or Nick? So, beg your pardon.
Apologies. Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on Councillor Upple's point, the applicant is intending for all units to be affordable rent, and they will be operated by a registered provider. However, for contractual reasons, they were not agreeable to having that captured within the 106. They were agreeable to the 20%, the policy compliant being within the 106. So that is the situation. Weight has not been given to 100% affordable, which you may know I didn't mention in my presentation, because it's not captured within the 106, but they have been consistent throughout that is their intent. In terms of Metro cards, highways do consider this to be the most appropriate method of promoting sustainable travel in this site, given its proximity to bus stops and if it is going to be affordable rented housing. Just return to Councillor Homewood's question, the buildings to the immediate northwest, which I understand is a coach house historically, are not listed in themselves. The only listed buildings are the mill and the buildings on that side of the road around it. Thank you, Chair.
Right, members, I want to... do you wish to speak, Councillor Bellamy? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It's to do, actually, to be honest, with the Metro cards. I mean, all these houses have got driveways, so I'm presuming most of them are probably going to have cars. So I don't quite understand the Metro cards, but my concern actually is, believe it or not, winter maintenance. You know, councillors are no longer allowed to sort of supply grit bins or grit or anything. So, you know, can something be put in that within the conditions that somebody supplies some winter maintenance? Because if it snows up there, which it does, and it's top of hill, nobody's going to be going anywhere. Thank you.
Do we have a response to that? I don't have that knowledge.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Julie Stedman, Group Leader for Development Management. So, yeah, in terms of winter maintenance, that's separate from the actual, I suppose, the planning regime. So it's not something that we can actually condition as part of a planning application. Just coming back to, though, in terms of the sustainable transport and the Metro car provision, if members feel appropriate, the recommendation could be updated on page 56 to refer to the contribution towards sustainable travel modes. So for securing those, as opposed to explicitly referring to the Metro cards. So if there are some more appropriate alternatives, then they could be secured as opposed to the Metro cards. We are still suggesting that Metro cards is the most appropriate because of the proximity to the bus stops, but we could have the section 106 more general to alternatives if there are some more appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
I say at this juncture, and it's with great reluctance. I mean, I've looked round. There's no big rushing to actually move office's recommendation, but I think it's something that's got to be done. And although I would like certainly.
Sorry, we were told not to touch them earlier. In light of Councillor Uppal and Councillor Bellamy's comments about the Metro cards, I'd like to ask about the item on page 66, 10.8, where it says, regarding climate change, measures would be necessary to encourage the use of sustainable modes of transport, adequate provision for cyclists, including cycle storage and space for cyclists, electric vehicle charging points and other measures have been proposed or would be secured by condition. A development at this site, which was entirely reliant on residents travelling by private car, is unlikely to be considered sustainable. Could we look again at just doing Metro cards as a way of you know, we're trying to encourage active travel, walking and cycling. Metro cards don't seem like the best option, I have to agree. Thank you, Chair.
The officer would like to just respond.
Sorry, Chair, yes, I just wanted some clarification on that part of the recommendation. Is it the committee's view that the recommendation at point 2B about Metro cards be changed to a general recommendation to apply that contribution to sustainable travel measures? Is that a general nod? Yes.
I see there's a bit of nodding there, so I would think that would be acceptable. Nobody seems to be.
So in that case, the recommendation.
Sorry. Have that included.
Right.
So I'm now looking for somebody to move this, however reluctantly, and I appreciate that. Councillor Uppal, you're prepared to move officer's recommendation with the slight alterations that we're making there. Is that seconded? If not, to move progress, I'll second it. reluctantly. So, all those in favour, please show.
We go the roll.
Oh, you've got...
Start with Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor B. Richards.
Against.
Councillor Belling.
Abstain.
Councillor Dunford.
Abstain.
Councillor McQueen.
Abstain.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Sarwar.
For.
Councillor Hopple.
For.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith.
Abstain.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Stockholm.
For.
Councillor Arnold.
Abstain.
For.
And Councillor Lyons. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for 1 against, 5 abstentions. So officer recommendation is carried.
Right. Street, Huddersfield. I understand, Councillor Sokol, you will be absenting yourself from this item. Thank you.
William, can you hear us? William? Yeah, just 1 sec.
Thank you, Chair. My name is William Subcock. I'm the case officer for this application. I hope you can all hear me well enough. This application at 132 Trinity Street, it is brought to committee at the request of Ward Councillor Sokal. It is a Grade 2 listed stone-built semi-detached dwelling, the right-hand half of a pair, 2 stories plus an attic and basement. It's built in stone with a blue slate roof. It is situated on the northern side of the highway opposite Greenhead Park and is within the Greenhead Park and New North Road Conservation Area. It has a small front yard and extensive back garden. It's proposed to convert the existing basement into 2 apartments. Each would have a living kitchen and 1 bedroom, the living kitchen being at the rear, the bedroom at the front. As set out in the report, alterations would be required to the exterior. This would include the restoration of 2 blocked up windows at the side, the formation of a new window and light well to the front. To the rear, there will be a new entrance at basement level and new external steps down to the basement, which would make use of the original steps, which at present reach from ground floor to garden level, and there'll be a new steel staircase from garden to ground floor. A previous scheme was refused on the grounds of inadequate light and outlook for future occupants. The changes this time are that in the larger or left-hand apartment, the living room is now to be at the rear, the bedroom at the front, and it's proposed a smaller apartment, the light well at the rear is enlarged. The front-facing light well serving this apartment is existing. For the reasons set out in detail in the report, it is considered that this does not represent a significant improvement in quality of life for future occupiers. Floor level in all 4 rooms would be significantly below ground level, resulting in limited natural light and outlook, and a gloomy and oppressive environment for future occupiers. In very rare instances, the desirability of providing a new use for a listed building that would otherwise remain vacant or severely underused may provide a justification for a development that would fail to accord with other planning policies. Such justification has not been successfully demonstrated here, in officers' view, in that the proposed accommodation is judged to be severely substandard, and furthermore, there is already a viable use, that is, as a single dwelling house as existing or house of multiple occupancy as approved for the ground and upper floors. In terms of impact on heritage assets, the interventions to the rear, that is, the demolition and reconstruction of the steps in a new position, would represent harm to the significance of the listed building, which would be slight and certainly less than substantial, but under the National Planning Policy Framework, even less than substantial harm must be justified by demonstrable public benefit if it is to be allowed. In this instance, it is considered that no public benefit has been shown. It is recommended this application is refused for the reasons stated in the report, that is, a severely unsatisfactory living environment for future occupiers and unjustified harm to the significance of heritage assets. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now have the
Malcolm Sizer.
Yes, you know the score, Malcolm. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of the applicant in respect of this proposal. The proposal will bring into use the basement of a listed building, presently only partly used for storage. It will provide 2 small apartments relatively close to the town centre. Your officers raised no objection in principle. However, refusal is recommended on the basis of 2 detailed matters. I deal firstly with the second reason for refusal, objection to the existing steps at the rear being removed to enable a new entrance to the basement to be formed. A new staircase will be provided. Frankly, the officer concern, as expressed in the officer's report, is not consistent with the consultation response of 24th of May this year from the Council's own Conservation and Design Officer. I quote, "The proposal causes less than substantial harm to the significance of the listed building. The public benefits of carrying out improvement works to the basement and bringing vacant floor space into use are considered to outweigh the harm." End of quote. I now deal with the concern raised by officers as their recommended first reason for refusal. They have no concern about the accommodation proposed as such, just the amount of natural light and outlook for residents. The proposal has been amended so that the living rooms will now look out over the rear garden with the benefit of the existing light wells increased in size. Internal floor levels will be a maximum of 1 metre below ground level at the rear, so a reasonable outlook will be assured. There is no national or adopted local standard by which light levels can be assessed. I would argue that the changes made to the scheme are such that the issues of light and outlook have now been satisfactorily addressed and that the proposals are acceptable in terms of their impact on the listed building. I would ask that you do not accept the recommendation, but welcome this addition to housing supply and delegate to officers the decision to approve the application.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Members. Councillor Uppel.
Thank you, Chair. And, thanks, Malcolm, for your comments as well. I've got to say, unfortunately for me, I agree with the refusal. I do have concerns about the natural light, and I think this plays quite a part in someone's habitable conditions, really. And having looking at some of these photos as well, that adds to my concerns, really. So I support the refusal.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit of a question, really. Is this actually only here because it's listed? Because, you see many sort of basement conversions where basements are made into kitchens or made into rooms. In Rosa Terraces, I mean, there's loads of them on sort of Woodhead Road, there's loads of them in sort of Marsden area because it's the only way they can gain any space. And they've obviously got not masses of natural lighting. So I'm just wondering, is this because it is listed, or is it because it's actually apartments? And if it wasn't, if it was just sort of a normal house, normal terrace, whatever, could they have just converted that basement into a kitchen anyway without any planning? So,
I can only assume here, and the officer will put me right if I'm wrong, that it's actual living conditions down there. It's not as though it is a kitchen and you can go upstairs into your living quarters. There is no actual light available. But if I'm wrong, I'm open to letting the office back. But Councillor Smith, you wish to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's a significant difference between using existing basement space to extend accommodation and converting it into an actual self-contained living space. I'm minded to agree with the officer's recommendations. I don't think it provides the conditions required for a comfortable life for future residents. Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Yeah, certainly in agreement with both Councillor Uppel and Councillor Smith on this one. To me, this would be providing something which really would not be great for the well-being of the individuals living in there. As I said, when you're living in somewhere without that level of natural light, it's certainly not a healthy environment. So from my perspective, I'd certainly second, if Councillor Uppel is proposing, I'll second that as well.
There's nothing further the officer wishes to say, is there? No. No, thank you. Right. So it's been proposed and seconded, officer's recommendation. All those in, well, no, it isn't all of those, it's up to...
Support the officer's recommendation.
Against?
Against.
Abstain.
For the recommendation.
For.
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 For. So was it arm, wasn't we? Yeah, for.
9 for, 2 against, 1 abstention, so officer recommendation is carried.
So next one is page 95. and it's 102 Dunford Road, Holmfirth.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Neil Bearcroft. I'm the planning officer who's dealt with this application. The application site forms a triangular plot of land to the west of 102 Dunford Road. Dunford runs parallel to the site to the east, with an access lane called Swan Bank Lane to the west of the site that leads down to a number of residential properties at the bottom. The access road also forms a public right-of-way carrying Holmfirth 108. On the right is a photograph of the site as it currently looks, as works have largely been completed on the site. You'll be able to see the parking area in the front and then retaining structures that have been erected. To the right-hand side is a residential dwelling. It's all right.
Okay, we're going to pause the meeting for 5 minutes. We'll have a 5-minute rest break.
Right, members, we're now recommencing the meeting, and the officer is going to give us his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Neil Bearcroft. I'm the planning officer who's dealt with this application, and it's page 95 on the agenda, an application of varied conditions at 102 Dunford Road. So the site comprises of a triangular piece of land off Dunford Road, which can be seen on the screen on the left-hand side. To the east of the site is Dunford Road itself, and to the west is Swanbank Lane, which leads down past the application site and then serves a number of dwellings at the bottom of the road. The photograph on the right-hand side shows what's been constructed on site. The scheme has been largely constructed as shown, with gabion retaining walls, a dry stone wall, and fencing has also been erected. The access also carries a public right-of-way. So these are a couple of the photographs of the site. The top left-hand corner one shows the dwellings that have been recently brought back into use by the applicant, and where the parking spaces will be related to. And on the one at the bottom right-hand corner shows the closest other property to the application site, Swanbank Cottage. This is another couple of photographs of the site. The one on the top left shows a picture looking down the lane with the residential dwellings at the bottom side, and the picture shows a parking area on the right-hand side with tarmacked areas and also cobbled areas on the lane. The bottom right-hand side shows it from the main part of Dunford Road, where the access joins Dunford Road and where highway improvements were proposed as part of the original application. So the application seeks to vary conditions in relation to the approved plans, landscaping, and also to remove a highway improvement that was secured by Condition 5. In relation to Condition 2 in the approved plans, the application seeks to amend the plans to what was approved, but still retain 3 parking spaces on the site. And as I've said, Condition 5 related to improvements to the point of access with Swanbank Lane and Dunford Road. The applicant seeking to remove that, whilst Condition 6 sought to provide landscaping details, and the applicant has provided some landscaping details. The application is brought to committee due to the number of representations received, and members will have received an email yesterday evening with an additional objection to the proposal, which was placed on the original 2019 application. These comments have been reviewed by officers, and they do not raise any new issues that haven't already been reported within the report. They've been summarised within the report, but that representation will be added to the file for this application. In total, we've received 18 comments, and the comments are mainly from residents of Swanbank Lane and the adjacent residential property, raising concerns about the use of the lane, whether the parking spaces will interfere with the lane, the impact on amenity of the adjacent dwelling, and also that the junction improvement should be retained. Members have a full and detailed report in front of them, but in essence they relate to the 3 elements that I've described about the plans, removal of the highway improvements, and also the landscaping details. In terms of the amendments to the approved plans, the design and layout of the changes to the retaining structures and the parking spaces are considered to be acceptable on visual amenity grounds, with the use of natural stone for the retaining structures, which is considered to be appropriate to officers. With regard to the changes to the parking spaces and their layout, it is noted that the amendments make the parking spaces less deep than what was approved, but swept path analysis, as can be seen on the plan shown on the screen, has been provided, and they demonstrate how they would be workable while still providing a benefit to highway safety by taking vehicles off the road. Whilst there is some concern that the proposed layout would require some multiple manoeuvres to make some of the spaces easily workable, on balance, given that the changes are considered to be acceptable and retain the benefit to highway safety brought about by the application. The removal of Condition 5 for the provision of highway improvements is sought as the applicant no longer considers this element of the scheme to be financially viable, with the main highway benefit being the provision of the parking spaces. Whilst the removal of the condition would lead to the loss of some of the highway benefit provided by the scheme, given that this was relatively small in scale, it is on balance considered to be acceptable for it to be no longer conditioned as part of the permission. In terms of landscaping, a plan has been provided, which is on screen now, that shows shrubs and native shrubs and turfing will be placed across the site to help soften the impact of the site and screen it from adjacent properties. The application is therefore recommended for approval to vary condition 2, remove condition 5, and also vary condition 6, along with varying other conditions within the report that are no longer necessary, such as the time to implement and moving gate posts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a few speakers for this one. We've got a couple of objectors who are going to be dialed in. So the first one is Joy Hewitson, which I'll contact now.
Well, we've got some joy in both sense of the words here. Right, Joy, you've got 3 minutes, and after 2.5 minutes, I'll give you the warning. You've just got 30 seconds, and you'll be cut off. So, if you'd like to start now, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My name's Joy Hewitson. I'm Resident Director of Swan Mill Management Company. I live in a small community of neighbours at the bottom of Swanbank Lane called Swanbank Court. We enjoy maintaining the appearance of our environment, and we have looked after the car park and the lane for many years until this development started. We've cleared the ice and the snow from the lane in the winter, and in the summer we have trimmed the weeds. Since 2018, when all the trees were felled without permission in that area, the lane has been messy and difficult to pass. The wall has moved, it has bowed out, and myself and another resident have scratched our cars on the wall to the left on the way down. The entrance to the lane has always been difficult coming down on Dunford Road, so that's as you travel north from Sheffield and you want to go down the lane and you're turning left into the lane, you have to swing out into the middle of Dunford Road in order to bypass the collection of stones that's not very well shown on the photographs that Mr. Bearcroft has shown, and the entrance there is very narrow. There's a large stone that has to be avoided as it would otherwise damage your car. By pulling out to swerve into the lane, this can cause difficulty with the safety and with traffic coming uphill and downhill on Dunford Road, which is a relatively main road, A616. The widening, which we thought was going to happen to the access of Swanbank Lane, would make this much safer for all Dunford Road users. I'm hoping that all the councillors have received my email containing photographs of the area. And just to explain, photograph 1 and 2 show our car park and how tidy and carefully maintained it is. Photograph 3 and 4 show the dry stone wall damage and how it is bowing out. Number 5 is looking up Dunford Road, or actually looking south, showing that actually compared to the photos that Mr. Bearcroft showed, there's an awful lot of greenery and there's many rocks and stones there which could cause damage.
30 seconds.
Then photos 6 and 7 is where it could be widened and where it should be widened. So I do object to the removal of the condition as mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Nikki, can you hear me? Yeah, yes. Well, just to remind you, if you don't already know, you have 3 minutes to speak, but after 2.5 minutes, I'll flag up 30 seconds, and then you must finish at the full 3 minutes, or you'll be cut off. Thank you very much. Carry on now.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding planning history side, called no enforcement history, but application 2020-91055 is for changes to application 2019-93524. So there is a live enforcement attached to it, and further submissions have been made to enforcement, but to no avail. Regarding visual impact and public amenity, my submitted photographs show the development as it looks today, including the parking area and the mess at the side of the parking area. Planning and enforcement have received evidence of the site at various stages. Conditions 2 and 6 allow us some protection as to the future and hopefully finale of the site development. The site is at the entrance to Underbank Conservation Area and is also on the popular public footpath Homefirth 108. The dry stone wall along the edge of the site is bowing out, and I believe largely due to the massive tree stumps that have been left leaning against it for the 3 years since they were felled. This should be viewed as a health and safety issue for the council regarding their public footpath, as well as the issue it already is for Swanbank residents driving on the lane. We have looked after the lane for more than 20 years, as per the stipulation attached when the old mill at Swanbank was converted to flats. Our management company suggested early 2019 that we hold further repairs to the lane until the development is complete, and we are still waiting. I strongly object to the removal of condition 5. It has been included in the applicant submissions at every stage and is the one benefit to Swanbank residents in an otherwise disastrous development. It is also of great benefit to the people that will be living in the applicant's properties on Dunford Road. I have included in my photos a car parked on the double yellow lines at the Dunford Road entrance to Swanbank Lane. We often suffer from this issue, and this can be backed up by the regularity of parking enforcement contact. Widening of the lane will ease the blind spots caused by such selfish parking, as luckily it is a rare person that has enough discourtesy to park over an obvious opening. Finally, I have also included an image taken from the delegated report and an image taken from amended site layout 10G. The photograph beside them shows the private parking bay, which is not included in the amended layout 10G. The car in the diagram on 10G would encroach on the private parking bay if it was correctly shown on the other side of Swanbank Lane. It also shows the correct location.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Firth, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. You can hear me, Donald. Yes. You're hit and missing. Oh, gosh.
Mill, Dunford Road. It's on Bank Mill because in 825 there was a private road to a mill. It was made spinning jennies. What a spinning jenny is. By quite a few people over the until when I fired in 1924. There was one Viability, another song Quop.
Councillor Firth, we're struggling to hear you.
Well, I've been struggling to hear you, but audio. IT looking at it. You hear me now? Am I still, you know?
We can try and call you if that helps. We can try and call you and dial you in. Do you want us to call you, Donald?
Yeah, come. Say. Oh. Okay. I await your call. Landline, it is. No. Has anybody? Richard?
Yeah. Councillor Firth, we're going to ring you.
Yeah. Will you ring me up, please? Sorry to hear the time today. Okay.
Yeah, we're ringing the landline.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. No problem.
Right, Donald, we'll restart the clock. We'll give you the 5 minutes and you carry on when you're ready. Okay.
Piece of newspaper. Right. I'll start from the beginning. Swanbank Mill, Dunford Road. It was built in around 1825 with a private road to the mill. That's the road we're talking about today. It was first in the area with the spinning jennies, if everybody knows what a spinning jenny was. And by 1834, it was owned by You want to start again?
Yeah, Don, have you got this on? If you've got it on in the background, can you mute it? Because I think that's what's happening.
Just shut it down then. I'll mute it. Sorry about that. Right, it's muted, Richard. It's muted.
Okay, thanks, Donald. Yeah.
Right. Swanbank Mill, Dunford Road. The original mill was built in 1825 with a private road to the mill, which is the road in question. And he was the first in the area to use spinning jennies, which I don't really know what they were, but I did quite a bit on spinning jennies. It was owned first of all by Ainsley of Noancastle and then Abel Cuttle. It finished up with John Brooke as a hearthrug manufacturing company, and the mill was destroyed by fire in 1924. Later on, there was a shed built and the works were there, and I do believe it was the Co-op who actually had it from that point of view as an abattoir, if I remember rightly. And then it finished up being a store place, and just over 20 years ago, of course, it went on the market and we got the apartments that were built. Just as a matter of interest, there are 11 apartments and 2 residential dwellings at the bottom of there. Now, I know quite a lot about this area particularly because they used to call me out, they still do, every few months when this builder decides to do what he wants without any planning permission at all. First of all, to cut trees down, then to start pulling walls down. Now, we are told that by Mr. Bearcroft, the planning officer, that it is a private road, but it's for public access. It's for public access, as far as I know, and Prow will probably back me on this, for people on foot, but for four-wheel vehicles for the people who are at the bottom. That road is a private road for those people who dwell in Swanbank Mill, in the area where Swanbank Mill used to be. These 2 houses that this guy's done up, number 100 and 102, were empty for about 20-odd years because I kept ringing Kirklees and asking them if they'd mind finding out who owned them, because there was nobody paying any council tax on them. Eventually, some 3 or 4 years ago, they found out who owned them, and I believe it was somebody in Middleton near Manchester or something like that. Anyway, that was fine. The houses were then put on the market. This builder obviously bought them, and from then on, it's been total disaster. He's done exactly as he wanted. He's opened up some parking down that private road, which totally out of order. No plans. He's had to put plans in, yes. But he's wanting those plans changing now for his benefit, not for the benefit of those poor people who live down there, and have lived and dwelt down there for over 20 years with no problems. It's a few weeks ago when I was phoned by one of the residents down there, some idiot had parked his car in the middle of that private road and he was refusing to move it. Well, most of the people had a rough idea who was behind it, but there were no names mentioned. So they did ring up Kirklees and said, look, there's a guy here in the road, we can't get either in or out, if there's ambulance needed, if he doesn't move, we've got a problem. And the first thing Kirklees Council said, not our problem, it is a private road, you'll have to ring the police, it is nothing to do with us. Well, that's funny, but suddenly, when it comes as a plan, it's to do with everybody. And all I can say before I finish, it's time that we got our act together down there and looked after the people who have actually lived down there for all those years with no problems. This guy, and he's put gabions up, which are fine, but look what the gabions like when it's 20 years old and all the metal parts rust away and all those stones fall out. It's another cheap way of dry stone walling, which I don't agree with. If anyone wants any dry stone walling, I'd be quite happy to do it because my grandfather brought me up to dry stone wall. But at the end of the day, it is not fair on these people who live down there, and I'm on their side. As their councillor, I am
30 seconds.
30 seconds, well, I'll just knock me off when I've finished. I'm on their side, and I'd like to think that the planning committee was on their side as well, because this has got to stop. This guy's caused more bother than enough over the last few years. Thank you for that, Terry. I'll catch you later, okay?
Thank you. Jeremy, you know you've got 3 minutes and you'll get the warning in 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, Chair, Officers, it's quite clear that the residents of Swanbank Court didn't want any sort of development off that back lane. Having said that, though, there is an existing approval, and this is for changes to that approval. As residents have said, it is a first-time developer who've no doubt sort of learnt his lesson through having to put amended plans in, but nonetheless, council officers have assessed the changes and deemed them to be acceptable and recommended approval. Obviously have some empathy with the residents of Swanbank Court, but they ought to look beyond their little microclimate at the benefits, like the council's highways officers have done, of getting cars from the properties off Dunford Road. And this is simply a ratification exercise of something that somebody has done, not maliciously, just through inexperience, but we have arrived at an application that is before you for something that council officers, both highways and planners, believe is acceptable. So I'd respectfully ask the committee to go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it then. Members. Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. The original condition 5, it says that thereafter all approved work shall be implemented before any part of the development is first brought into use and be retained thereafter. Am I to understand that that's not happened, that the development has been brought into use, or is that not the case? I mean, on the face of it, this looks to me like a developer who's come in, got permission, had some conditions set, and thought, right, I'll crack on, and I'll not do the conditions, and then I'll come back and try and see retrospective changes. And I don't like it. And I think the original condition 5 is sensible and should be enforced. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, this sits within my ward.
Councillor Homewood.
And certainly, you know, as Councillor Smith had just said, you know, my view is that we should not be removing condition 5. And I note that the parish council have also made that same statement through their planning committee. I am a parish councillor, but I'm not part of that planning committee, so I wasn't part of that decision. And I think Councillor Smith has really said it all, so I'm not going to add any further than that. But certainly I'm not happy with this condition being removed.
Councillor Homewood, then Councillor Sokol.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, similarly, I mean, I'm a little bit confused, and maybe it doesn't take a lot, but I don't understand why we've put in place conditions and then we're now suggesting that those conditions be removed when nothing's changed in terms of what's there in the development. I'm a bit struggling with that, why we're not defending our position on those conditions. I can't see anything that makes me think, oh, we should have changed that, unless we're saying that when we applied these conditions at the time, we made an error in applying them. And if you are saying that, I think that's a different thing to me. So I'd agree with my colleagues that I don't see the reason for removing for conditions. So yeah, that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I know the area very well because one time I used to drive bus down on that road, Dunford Road, and even those times, 12, 15 years ago, it was very congested parking on the Dunford Road both side. It made the parking in one lane only on the side. If this applicant it doesn't agree to widen the road, widen the sight line on the road, I think it will be dangerous. Yeah. So I agree with my colleague. We should not agree to remove this condition on there. Yeah, thank you.
I think I've got the mood here, and I'm just wondering myself, where's enforcement been on this one? But anyway, would somebody like to oppose the officer's recommendation and turn this down? The legal officer wishes to.
Sorry, I think the tenor of the debate is not for the officer's recommendation, which is to approve. I've heard what the members have said about not liking this proposal, but I think we need to tease out some reasons so that the applicant knows exactly what he must address if that's the case and you are refusing. So I'll hand over to the planning officer because I think he'll be able to explain more clearly what the if you read the report, the recommendation is on balance, and so there have been competing interests about making the recommendation, but the alternative, which is what members seem to be wanting, I think needs to be put explicitly.
Thank you, Deborah. So I think from what members have discussed, the removal of condition 5 about the highway improvements, members don't seem to be supportive of that. So in essence, they would be taking the view that the provision of the 3 parking spaces down the lane leads to an intensification of the access, and therefore it's imperative that you get those improvements at the point of the access. The one thing that I'm not completely sure on at the moment is about the changes to what's been built out on site, the changes to the layout or to the design, whether members have got an objection to that or whether they're comfortable with the design and the layout.
Mr. Smith. Yeah, I'm more relaxed about the changes to the design and layout and condition 2. It's condition 5 which I object to, or the removal of it.
Councillor Davies.
Yeah, absolutely. I would concur with Councillor Smith. It is condition 5 as far as I'm concerned. I think the others are not as significant. And I think we heard from the objectors that it really is condition 5 that the focus.
Just so that we're all clear, condition 5 has been talked about, but the application relates to condition 2 and condition 6. So I will pass you over to the planning officer again to point out what they are and what you have said in relation to that.
So just in terms of what we've just discussed, it sounds like the design, the layout changes, those additional, the gabion and wall retaining structures, the layout, its appearance, members are broadly okay with. And in terms of the landscaping, that some details have been provided and there's been no concern raised about that. It's purely about the retention of that condition on the scheme. Is that fair comment?
If that's generally acceptable, then we need a mover and second to that effect. Julia?
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify then, in terms of condition 5, this is relating to, as Neil, the case officer, pointed out, the intensification of use of that access. And you felt that the highway improvement works previously approved are required for highway safety reasons. Is that a correct summary? Thank you, Chair.
Prepared to move that then?
Yes, so I think, sorry, so the recommendation is that approve variation of condition 2 and 6, but retain condition 5.
Councillor Smith's moving that. Is that seconded by Councillor Davies? I'll leave it to you now, Richard.
So going to vote, so just to confirm then, so this is a vote to approve the variation of condition 2 and 6, and to refuse the removal of condition 5. That's what we're voting on. Okay, right. So Councillor Hall.
Agree.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee Richards.
Agree.
Councillor Bellamy.
Agree.
Councillor Bamford.
Agree.
Councillor McGuinn.
Agree.
Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, for.
Councillor Sawa.
For.
Councillor Apple.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Armour.
For.
And Councillor Lyons. So that's unanimous. Yep.
Right, our final one is page 14, and it's now 5 to 25 Claywell Golka.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is item 7. This is an application for full planning permission for residential development of 13 homes at land to the south of 5 to 25 Claywell Golka. Members will recall that this application was considered at the previous subcommittee meeting, where officers were instructed to bring back a report with draft reasons for refusal relating to the concerns raised by members. Members will also recall that this application is a resubmission of application 2019-90925, which was considered by the subcommittee last year on the 19th of March, but which was subsequently refused as no Section 106 agreement was completed. Members, I won't go through the same presentation as last time in full. However, just to remind members, this is a site within the Golka Conservation Area on the south edge of the village, on the north hillside of a subsidiary valley that runs east-west towards the River Colne. The site has previously been in agricultural use, and there has been some previous use as allotment gardens. The site is now partly overgrown. In planning terms, this is a previously undeveloped greenfield site. This application relates to one of 4 sites on this hillside, all of which are developed or have been the subject of previous planning approvals. The inset image here illustrates some of the constraints relevant to the site and its surroundings, including public footpaths and adjacent greenbelt land. There are also nearby listed buildings on Claywell and Brook Lane, and the application site includes a TPO protected wooded area at its south end, and also there is a single TPO protected tree in the adjacent site to the east. These are various views of the site previously seen by members at the last subcommittee meeting. And these are longer views of the site from the southeast and from the south. Turning now to the concerns raised by members at the last subcommittee meeting, the supplementary report before you provides a draft reason for refusal related to the proposed development's lack of on-site open space. However, it is not recommended that planning permission be refused for this reason. Following that last subcommittee meeting, the applicant requested that the site's protected woodland be counted as on-site open space, and that's the area shown in a kind of grey-green at the bottom of the site on the right-hand side of this slide. Counting this space as open space is indeed possible. The Council's Open Space SPD allows for such woodland to be counted as natural and semi-natural open space. That's the typological definition or term, including where public access to the space is not provided or is not possible. The space here measures 1,952 square metres, and it would come under the responsibility of the Residence Management Company under the applicant's new proposals. With this on-site provision, and with a further £22,948 secured towards off-site provision to meet the development's other open space needs, and which is likely or would be likely to be spent at one of the existing play spaces illustrated on this slide to the left, it is considered that adequate open space will be provided for the 13 units. At the last subcommittee meeting, members also expressed concern regarding the proposed unit size mix, which comprised entirely of 3 and 4 bedroom units. Again, a draft reason for refusal is provided in the supplementary report. However, again, the applicant has made amendments in an attempt to address members' concerns. 2 of the 3 bedroom units have recently been reduced in size to become 2 bedroom units, as illustrated in this slide. This means that the overall unit size mix would now be 2 2-bedroom units, 6 3-bedroom units, and 5 4-bedroom units. It is considered that this amended and improved unit size mix would adequately cater for a range of household sizes, and refusal of permission on these grounds is not recommended. Regarding other matters discussed at the last subcommittee meeting, members also expressed concern regarding character. an incomplete draft refusal reason is set out in the supplementary report, this would need to be completed by members through their confirmation of which specific aspects of Golca's character would be harmed by specific aspects of the proposed development. As set out in the previous and supplementary reports, officers do not recommend refusal on these grounds. Similarly, a refusal of permission based on members' concerns regarding drainage is not recommended, given the advice of the lead local flood authority and Yorkshire Water. A draft reason for refusal is, however, provided in the supplementary report for members to consider. Regarding trees, while the proposed felling to make way for the proposed development is regrettable, there is commentary provided in the previous and supplementary reports explaining why the proposed development is considered acceptable in relation to tree impacts. A draft reason for refusal has, however, been prepared at members' request. Regarding greenfield development concerns, a reason for refusal has not been drafted. Such a refusal would plainly contradict the Council's decision to allocate the site for development and its decision, and also the Council's decision and resolution to approve previous applications at this site. So, in short, members, there isn't a planning policy to hang a refusal reason on in relation to loss of greenbelt land or development on a greenfield land and development at a greenfield site like this. Should members have concerns related to the principle of developing this greenfield site, such as the loss of trees, these will be better conveyed via the other draft reasons for refusal. Regarding other relevant planning considerations, beginning with financial viability, following the last subcommittee meeting, the applicant advised that their favourable financing option had expired and the applicant therefore reverted to a position arguing that no Section 106 contributions or affordable housing could be provided, although this week the applicant has emailed to say one intermediate unit could be provided. This is not accepted. The proposed development is required to provide the full complement of Section 106 contributions, as well as 3 affordable housing units, not just one. There is also no evidence to suggest that the applicant could not secure favourable financing again, just as the applicant did shortly before the previous subcommittee meeting. Finally, regarding pepper potting of affordable housing at this site to address members' concerns, this can indeed be secured as set out in the supplementary report. And a condition regarding sustainable energy technologies, which was raised at the last subcommittee meeting, can also be added to the conditions listed in the previous committee report. Members will have seen the advice included in the supplementary report regarding risks at appeal following a refusal of planning permission, including the risk of costs being awarded against the Council on the grounds of inconsistent decision-making, which could constitute unreasonable behaviour. Other potential grounds for cost awards are also set out in the supplementary report. Members, I should be clear now, members, you are free to refuse planning permission for any of the refusal reasons that have been drafted in the supplementary report. Doing so would not be unlawful. However, members are asked to consider the advice provided, including legal advice, along with the applicant's recent moves in relation to open space and unit size mix, and the fact that the scheme is otherwise essentially the same as that considered under the previous application, which this subcommittee resolved to approve last year. Again, the officer recommendation is to approve planning permission. However, draft reasons for refusal have been provided as requested, should members wish to proceed with a refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
No speakers.
No speakers. Members. Councillor Davies, Councillor Hall, Councillor Uppel.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the officer for going through that and for the work they've done in terms of going through the issues we looked at last time. I think for me, within the report, 11.5 really sums up the situation, and the officer was referring to that just now in terms of consistency in planning decisions. And I think it's very clear from within 11.5 in my mind as to where we should go with regards to this decision. Certainly in the last discussion I voted for the recommendation. I still had the same mind, having looked through the information and also taken on board this crucial aspect of consistency in planning decisions. And I think, as the officer says, we are perfectly entitled to change. It doesn't mean there's a precedent set, but I think that certainly would be very difficult for us to defend when we are talking about reasons which were in very recent times not deemed as being significant and not being deemed as appropriate to refuse such an application. So for me, I certainly remain of the same mind as I was in the last discussion, but I'd like to thank the officers. I think the work they did on the detail on the issues was of great value and certainly helped me in understanding whether I was missing something or other. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thanks, Chair. Initially, I was just going to ask about the minimum space standards, but as that report went on, I got a little bit more annoyed, and it does look to me as though the stance the developer are taking with the 106 is a bit of a, well, it's costing us a fortune for retaining structures and this and that and that, and this has come into play and that's come into play. We didn't bargain for that and that cropped up. So, to be quite honest with you, I'd be inclined to refuse this. I think offering one house when it should be 3, you know, it just looks tit for tat for me. So I'd be quite prepared to turn around and say, well, we'll give it a chance, we'll refuse it, we'll go to an appeal. If we lose, we won't get any 106, but we're not going to get any 106 anyway. So we're not going to be losing anything. So I'll listen to see what other people have got to say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with what Steve's saying there about the developer. I mean, from what we're saying in the report is that we're not accepting what they've said on Section 106 and the affordable housing requirements, and so we shouldn't accept what they said because it's frankly despicable. They've done it twice now, and it's not acceptable that developers are doing this sort of stuff. And it's a shame that they're not here to defend themselves either, really. Totally unacceptable. I don't agree with it. Obviously, we're saying that we don't accept what they're saying, on that they can't do this. So on that, we must, you know, I would not accept them coming back saying financial viability when twice now, at least twice, they've been told that they're wrong. So I'm very disappointed on that point in terms of developers. On the proposed open space, so from my understanding is we always knew the woodland was there previously. At that point, we didn't class it as part of the potential open space. Now, because we've raised concerns about open space, they've come back and said that the woodland that was always there, that should be classed as open space. But from what it says in the report, it's not totally clear. People might not actually be able to access the open space. Maybe that can be clarified. So again, I don't particularly like that. The size mix has improved, great stuff. Pepper potting, they've agreed to that, great stuff. They've agreed to something on energy, great. But I do have my concerns. I understand what Paul said, and I agree there is an issue about national planning law on this, and that's part of the problem as well. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I could have a clarification on the open space point. That'd be great.
Well, thank you. Perhaps at this juncture, you might bring the legal officer in then for some further clarification.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. I've been listening to the debate and what you've been saying, and you're focusing, it seems to me now, upon the affordable housing offer issue. Page 25 is the previous report, and page 25 starts off with the recommendation delegate to officers to secure 106 to cover affordable housing, 3 affordable units, and so on. So that is what officers now are still recommending. However, it's slightly amended in this recommendation to approve with 2 additional points, which is a revision to the open space contribution and also an addition to the sustainable energy technologies. So officers are still of the view that it's an acceptable scheme with those 2 extra conditions on, but what's been raised now is the developers' apparent reluctance, well, not apparent, stated reluctance to provide policy compliant affordable housing. and Councillor Davies has mentioned previous consistency in decision making. I think that applies to the developer too. I mean, previously that was acceptable. So I think from my perspective, members have got a choice now to say we refuse because of that, or we approve, but with the proviso that if a Section 106 agreement isn't delivered within 2 months, it's automatically sent back to the head of planning to refuse for non-compliance with the affordable housing policies. That's what I summarise it at the moment.
Councillor Homewood.
Thanks. Just 2 points. Yeah, just on what Councillor Zuppel was saying about the public open space. I am a little bit confused about that because I don't understand the definition of public open space if it's not open to the public. So I'm a bit confused. We seem to have ended up in a position where we're getting less benefit than we were last time out. So that seems unsatisfactory. But just on the point we just made about the affordable homes, I agree with what the legal officer suggested there, but I know in the past we've actually as a committee had detailed evidence from developers about the affordability of the provision of the affordable homes. I'm just trying to understand, should that information in this case be coming back to the committee to look at, to agree on whatever viability assessment they're providing back to us? That would be my question. Should that be coming back to us to look at in a case like this, or is that possible?
Well, I'll ask the planning officer to speak to that in more detail, but there is detail at paragraph 10 of the supplementary report, which carries on to 10.5. So the planning officer can come in on that, but there is that financial viability detail there. But I'll pass over to Victor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the officers for all the additional work that they've put into this. I've never thought this was a good scheme, and my thoughts on this have not changed. I find it difficult that we've been come back and asked to justify specifically what the change of character would be. It's undoubtedly going to change the character of Old Gulka. Just in terms of the general look of the place, building on Greenfield, and the look of overdevelopment on Old Gulka in general. I know I've raised concerns before about access from Cartop Lane, about drainage, and some of those have been addressed, so I've not got planning reasons for that, but I've still got concerns. It's in the local plan. Should it ever have been in the local plan? I don't think so. You know, we regularly refuse relatively minor changes and developments on greenfield sites in this committee, and I just find it bizarre, to be honest, that we would consider in the local plan and at this committee a development of this scale on a greenfield site in a site of historical importance, which will change the character of the village. That's my point, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Davies and then Councillor McGuinn.
Yeah, just following up on the advice, the legal advice we've been given, you know, and comments from Councillor Paul and Councillor Homewood. I certainly agree that the developer is absolutely going the wrong way in terms of the financial viability, and my view is very clear. If we approve this, it has to be with a very clear condition that that's not acceptable. And maybe I should have said that initially, but certainly I'm not in any way proposing that we would accept that. And I think this would have to be a very strong condition that's put in place, and that we would act on if the developer does not abide by that condition. But my concern here as well is, you know, understand all the issues that we've talked about, and understand, you know, the views around this. But the reality is, based on the advice we've been given, And based on what's happened previously, I think we would find this extremely difficult to defend if it came to an appeal stage. I would much rather us make sure we've got the right conditions in place and put this forward on that basis rather than try and defend something which actually the probability is that we would not be able to win that battle as such. But that's a decision clearly for other members as well.
Councillor McGuinn.
Yeah, we have got a problem because it's the local plan, isn't it? It all goes back to how can we reasonably refuse it? So because it's in the local plan, I don't think we can. Head of strategic planning, chairman of strategic planning has said we can because there's not enough provision for affordable housing. So we either refuse it because there isn't enough affordable housing, or we accept it because we can put that condition in that we want the reasonable 106 payments for affordable housing. It's which way we take it. I think that's all there is to it.
You're saying acceptance conditional upon the affordable housing?
Yeah. But I'm not going to propose it.
Councillor Bellamy, and then the officer wishes to come back. So
thank you, Chair. I actually agree with Councillor Hall. I think we're being played by the developer here. I think, 1 minute this is affordable, next minute it's not affordable, all the rest. We had the reasons last time why to refuse it, and to be honest, the officers have put that together, and I'm quite happy to remove refusal, because I think it's not right, however we look at it. Thank you.
I wonder if this juncture, then I'll leave the office till last, and I'll bring in Councillor Hall, put his hand up, and Councillor Homewood.
There's only one way that I would change what I said. Thanks for backing me up anyway, Donna, but it's to go with what Deborah said about an option of the affordable, and that if it does go through today, a condition is that the affordable is included in a 106, and if after say 2 months the developer's still in and kicking the rails, so right, you've had 2 months, they've been fair at committee, that's it, it's refused. And I'd go with that.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to...
Councillor Homewood, then the officer are chomping at the bit.
It's on the same point, so I'll because they'll probably be part of the same question. So I was just going to say, I agree with what Councillor Hall's just saying. I think, and thank you to Deborah for pointing out the section in the report, but I think what I was meaning was that what I'm concerned about is that we put a condition about the 106. We want to make sure as a committee that that's watertight, because what I don't want to do is approve something that then later down the line we find out that we've agreed some sort of 106 that actually doesn't provide the 3 affordable homes, and that's the bit that I'd be concerned about, that then people say to me, you've approved this and it's not delivered what was intended. So I'm happy as long as the condition is kind of watertight, if you see what I mean, to make sure we deliver that, or if we're not going to deliver it, that it comes back to the committee to approve that agreement, if that makes sense. Thank you.
I think we're not talking about a condition here. We're talking about it's in a sense a condition, but it's a recommendation within the resolution. It's not a condition set out in the planning permission. It's part of the recommendation that if that is not delivered in a particular timescale, it is either brought back to the committee again, or better, automatically refused by the head of planning.
Thank you, Chair. Just to, I suppose, clarify that point as well, on page 26, we have set it out in there about completing the 106 within, we've actually specified 3 months in there, but hearing what members have said, I think if you want us to specify 2 months, then we can do that. And as it also sets out in there, is if we don't or if we're not able to secure that 106, specifying the sort of the affordable units, so the 2 affordable social rent and 1 intermediate, and the various other contributions set out on page 25, we would bring it back. Well, we would have delegated power to refuse that in a similar way to what we did with the previous scheme. So like I say, that's if we didn't secure those contributions set out on page 25. If, for example, further information came forward, and like you're saying now, the applicant came forward and felt they had a case to justify a reduced affordable housing provision, we could ensure that that is brought back to members. If we're not able to agree that 106 within the 2 month time frame. Does that sound a fair summary of the discussion and thoughts of members there? Thank you, Chair.
I don't know if the planner wants to come back, or does he think he's not heard enough?
Victor, do you want to add anything?
I will, if I may, through you, Chair. Thank you. There were just a couple of other questions that I wanted to respond to. The question about the open space, the on-site open space. Yes, the woodland was always part of the planning application site. It was within the red line boundary, but it was only subsequent to the last subcommittee meeting that the applicant formally asked us to consider and accept the on-site woodland as open space, and for it to be counted towards the on-space requirements of this development. Just to clarify, the Council's open space SPD sets out 6 different typologies of open space, some of which do require public access, some don't. So the open space typologies include allotments, spaces for young people and children, other kinds of open space, including what we refer to as natural and semi-natural open space, which can include space that isn't directly accessible to members of the public, and there may be various reasons for access not being available to members of the public. In this case, this is a TPO protected woodland where to put paths through that woodland would be damaging to the roots and possibly also the trunks of trees growing within that woodland, and that would jeopardize their health and future survival. Putting in paths on this particular site is difficult because of the slope. You would have to put in reasonably deep foundations to support any kind of flat footpath surface, and that could and the trees officer at the council has expressed concerns about that being done, and that's why the recommendation is to keep that woodland as not accessible to the public, but that it could be counted towards that typology and be counted as on-site open space. On top of that, there's a requirement for £22,000 worth of contributions to meet the other open space requirements of a 13-unit development of this size. And just to reiterate what colleagues have said regarding the Section 106 planning obligations and affordable housing, yes, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to all of those requirements being secured if within 3 months or possibly 2 months, if members want it to be restricted to that time period. If within that period that Section 106 agreement is not completed, then the recommendation is that officers have delegated powers to refuse planning permission because of the absence of that Section 106 agreement and affordable housing. That recommendation is made because members, in our experience, officers' experience, we have found that some developers can be quite able to change their position on viability in the face of a scenario like that, where they've got 2 or 3 months to complete a Section 106 agreement or refuse or receive a refusal. It may be surprising how flexible some developers prove to be in the face of that scenario, and it's possible that could happen here. Their alternative, or the alternative to them completing the 106 agreement, would be a refusal and then possibly a lengthy appeals process. So it might be It might be the case that this developer considers it to be in their interests to agree to everything that's set out in that recommendation in terms of 106 contributions in affordable housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right. What are you going to
Can I come back in, Chair?
offer up? Sorry.
Could I come back in and
Yes.
summarise the position we've reached so far? At the moment, we have got a motion on the table for refusal by Councillor Bellamy, but without a reason and without a seconder. And we have an amended recommendation, officer's recommendation, which is set out essentially on page 25 of the report, but with two additions, namely a revision to the open space contribution as set out in the supplementary report, and an additional condition sustainable energy technologies, and then possibly change the time limit from 3 months to 2 months, and then either confirm that there should be an automatic refusal or let us know whether you want to bring it back to refuse it. So the officer's recommendation for approval, subject to the extra conditions relating to sustainable energy technologies, the amended OS contribution, and with a delegated decision to refuse if the 106 is not delivered in a specified timescale.
Councillor Davies.
I think quite neatly that's just that would sum up what I would propose going forward. I think we should accept with those provisos in there. I don't believe it needs to come back to us as a committee if within 2 months it should be an automatic refusal by officers. And I think that would, as Councillor Homewood raised, that would cover that concern, and it would. I like the way the officer described the developers, but it would focus their mind as well. And I would be perfectly comfortable to support that and propose that to the committee. Yes, I'm moving that.
Councillor Hall, do I take it you're seconding that?
Yes, the 2 months automatic refusal. We don't need it to come back. And I'll second Councillor Davis.
So really, I can put that to the committee because the Councillor Bellamy's proposal wasn't seconded. So that is the actual proposal now, that we accept what the legal officer has put before us from Councillor Davis.
Can I just clarify? Is it the time limit has been reduced from 3 to 2 months?
Yeah, we've got a substantive motion on the table now, proposed and seconded, and I think all the members are clear about what the amended recommendation is.
So we'll go to vote on that basis. Okay. All right. So mic's not working this end, so you will have to put on your microphones when I... Oh, you've done it. Okay, cool. So we're starting with Councillor Hall.
Agree.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Abstain.
Councillor Bellamy.
Against.
Councillor Dunford. For. Councillor McGuinn.
Abstain.
Councillor Homewood. For. Councillor Sawa.
For.
Councillor Uppel.
Abstain.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Armour.
Abstain.
Okay. And Councillor Alliance 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for, 2 against, 4 abstentions. So the recommendation as per the officer report to take account of those adjustments, those amendments has been carried.
Right, in that case then, finally, that concludes the meeting, and I just thank you all for your attendance. Thank you. Bye.